giỡn giòn đi.
Hột gà nướng, hột vịt lộn, hột vịt sữa, trứng cút lộn, bất xào đây.
Okay, welcome to the 5th episode of the special quarantine season. The next guest up was the first ever guest on 7 Million Bikes and the first ever repeat guest on 7 Million Bikes. And I haven't spoken to him in over a month, and I wanted to catch up with him and have a chat because I miss talking to him. So let's welcome JK Hobson. How are you?
Yeah, what up? I'm good, man. Just in quarantine. Not really quarantine, just actually chilling. But yeah, I'm here in my apartment in District 3 of Saigon, looking out the window at the minimal amount of traffic that's just driving by. A bunch of motorbikes driving by my window, and it's pretty chill. The skies are looking pretty clear because there's not a lot of, I guess there's not a lot of pollution these days. So could be a lot worse. Could be a lot worse. Yeah, man.
It is an added benefit, isn't it? I'll look at the AQI and I'm used to seeing like 150 and don't go out without a mask, and now it's all green and the sky is blue. Here's
But
some
still,
benefits
don't
of it.
go out without a mask.
Well, that's true. That's true, just for a very different reason, right?
For a very different reason. Yeah.
So do you want to explain to us? So today's Friday, the 3rd of April.
Yep.
I'm on day 14 of quarantine, so 14 days here, which has gone by surprisingly fast. We've just had our second COVID test today, so as soon as we get the all clear on the second test, then we'll be allowed to go, which is doubtful that we'll be ready for tomorrow, so we're hoping that on Sunday we'll be able to get out of here. But we're going to come back to a very different place. When we left Saigon on March 10th, life was pretty much normal, and then now we're going to come back into a very different scenario. So do you want to tell me, because I'm still figuring out what life's going to be like, and for anyone listening around the world, what is life like in Saigon right now?
Well, it's really quiet. The government has asked that people don't leave their homes unless they absolutely need to. And need to means like, going out to get food. They've limited public meetings. In other words, you're not supposed to meet people out in public to 2 people at a time. So you're going to go out and meet somebody, make sure you're meeting only one person. And they want us to obey like social distancing rules, which is, make sure you're standing a meter apart, or 2 meters apart rather, from anybody you're talking to. Right now, I'm looking at 4 people walking across the street. They are all wearing masks, but they're standing right next to each other. So I would say
the messages
in comparison,
are getting through to everyone.
Yeah. I think that because Vietnam was so ahead of the curve, Vietnam closed the border to China. I forget when that was. It might have even
January,
it was in January, right? Yeah.
I think so, yeah, before Tet.
And then we had the Tet holiday, which lasted until the end of January. And I remember I had 2 classes that weekend, right? Which is like, I guess, the first weekend of February. And then that was it. The public schools were closed. So I think if I'm estimating correctly, so we had the Tet holiday, I don't even know if public schools opened after the Tet holiday, right? Public schools
Probably
closed.
not, right? Yeah.
So in effect, public schools have been closed since the middle of January, right?
That's
and then
crazy,
slowly,
yeah.
yeah, that's like over 2 months already, right? Actually, shit. Yeah, over 2 months, right? Almost 3 months. Jesus Christ, this is going on forever. A lot of people have been teaching online, so fortunately for me, the company that I work for is an English teacher. They found a way to sort of transition the classes so that I can work online now. Although I have way less work than I did, when I had regular classes. So people are scraping by, but okay, so we'll get to that in a minute. But the other things they did, slowly they started implementing different rules. Like at a certain point, I guess it was the beginning of March, or maybe the second week of March, they said that all bars and clubs should close because they're deemed as unnecessary, right? So then you still had restaurants open, and then about a week and a half ago, they said, okay, all restaurants that seat more than 30 people should remain closed, or not, or just not seat anybody. You can send stuff to go, you can order stuff to take away, but you can't sit at the restaurant. And then that became all restaurants feeding more than 10 people should remain closed to business. So right now, you have some restaurants open. Everybody's doing takeaway. Everybody's doing Grab. Um, and Grab is our local rideshare company. I've even heard that so they have a declaration of health that you can fill out online. And I've heard that some Grab drivers will ask to see your declaration of health, which is basically if you fill it out, it's like, well, where is the last place you traveled? Have you had a fever? Basically giving your word that you haven't been around anyone who has coronavirus and you haven't developed symptoms of coronavirus of your own. So
yeah, that's what you have to show the driver now.
Right. But because Vietnam has been so ahead of the curve, like again, like you're seeing news in the U.S., people are still going out. I saw a mega church. There's like 550 people in this mega church praying that coronavirus will go away. I'm like, I got a better idea. How about not meet up with 550 people? You know what I'm saying? It's like one of those zombie movies where there's like, oh, there's one zombie in the crowd of people, but then that person bites somebody, and that person bites somebody. And next thing you know, you got a whole COVID-19 horde piling out of the megachurch.
Well, did you see in your hometown of New York, they brought in a naval ship to accommodate patients that didn't have COVID, like patients, and everyone flocked out to go and see this naval ship.
Yeah, that was very dumb. To be fair, I don't think any of those were native New Yorkers. I don't think native New Yorkers. Those are new people. They don't really count. They don't really count. They're not really people. Yeah, I did see that. It's a total shit show over there, man. They've got I stopped counting at 40,000 cases and close to 300 people dead. And that was maybe 2 days ago. I haven't checked the latest numbers, but just the sheer density of New York, and it's like, and you can ask people to quarantine, you can ask people to stay in their homes, but not everybody has the luxury. I'm a single guy, so I can sit here in my apartment alone, like indefinitely. I spend most of my time alone anyway, but some people live with families and in large buildings. That's another thing is a few of the large buildings here in Saigon, there was a case where it's kind of notorious here in Saigon now, where this one bar they used a loophole to get out of the early closing regulation, out of the closing ruling, because they had a restaurant license. So they said, well, technically, since we serve food, which is like, French fries, buffalo wings, bar food or whatever, they could stay open, right? So they stayed open for a St. Patty's Day celebration. And of course, everybody's got to drink on St. Patty's Day, right? So a bunch of people went out to drink, and it turned out that one person who was in attendance was a pilot that had just flown in from overseas, and he wasn't exhibiting symptoms yet. And I think something like 17 cases immediately started from that, and now we're up to, last time I checked yesterday, was 222 cases. 75 of them have recovered, but there's still 222 and counting, obviously. So some of the people that were at that bar at that time were also diagnosed with coronavirus. They're tested positive, and they lived in huge buildings, like tall apartment buildings, and they immediately quarantined the entire apartment building, like no ins and outs. So they're really being hardcore about it. I would say that this is probably, in an epidemic like this, Vietnam is not only well prepared, but the government can enforce the kind of control that they see fit. You know, for example, quarantining a whole building. Like, it would be really difficult to pull something like that off in the United States. You know what I mean? People would be like, well, you know,
Can you imagine?
Right. You know what I mean? The land of freedom. You know, you get the freedom to go to a mega church if you want to while there's a pandemic, right? So I think that's part of the reason why, they're having such a hard time getting a hold of it. And also just people just not listening, not staying home, not,
Well, we were talking
yeah.
just today. We were just talking today about how Vietnam learned a lot from SARS because they were impacted by that, and they've taken those lessons on board. And I think that's what we're seeing with these reactions in Vietnam, is learning those lessons and getting things done quickly, but also because it has the authority to do it, and the population will acquiesce to that.
Right.
We're almost in a fortunate position. But now when you see America, like, obviously people distrust the government for right or wrong reasons, whatever they are. And, there's a reason not to be 100% trustful. But that's the problem, right? Like, we've had shady governments for so long in America and the UK that there's so little trust that at a time like this, when you really need to trust the people in charge, it's completely eroded. And then you also have someone in charge who's completely untrustworthy as well. So,
right.
I mean,
right.
Yeah, watching the developments in America right now, you're just like, I mean, you've probably seen it as well. You've seen the Daily Show clips of Trump being like, oh, it's just the flu. And then like another clip of him 2 weeks later saying, some people are saying that it's just the flu, but it's not just the flu. It's worse than that. And it's like, you were the person saying 2 weeks ago that this was just the flu. Like,
yeah.
Oh.
Don't get me started. And then he's like, what was the other thing he said? He's like, yeah, well, things were said, but we're moving on. I'm like, he says he's about the future. He's not about like looking at. So basically, he doesn't want to come out and say that he was wrong. So it's kind of like when somebody does something egregious, and you're like, he did something like 2 days ago. It's like, hey, why'd you do that? Why'd you kick my dog? It's like, dude, that was 2 days ago. Can we just move on? I can't do anything about that, right? Let's just like pick it up from here, right? And that's what he's trying to do. He's just trying to change the narrative, and that's and so there's a reason not to trust, the standing, executive branch, but there are people that he has on his cabinet. That guy, what's his name, Fulci,
Fauci, I think.
Right, and that guy, I'm pretty sure the reason he's in the position that he's in, that he probably doesn't challenge Trump to his face. He doesn't come out and say,
couldn't be there
you're wrong. Right.
No.
It'd be like being a friend of Michael Jackson's. It'd be like, hey, like you think you might want to get all these kids out of your house, right? You're gonna be like, no, you're out of here. You're not my friend. Get out of here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's probably somebody that was telling him that.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that Fauci. We were watching Being Stuck Here in Quarantine last week. Have you seen those ads on YouTube come up for Masterclass? Or I don't know if you've watched any of those episodes. It's, you have an expert speaker who gives a masterclass on a different subject, whether it's storytelling or different things.
Yeah.
And so a roommate, Anastasia, had an account, and we watched one from an FBI negotiator, and it was really, really interesting, talking about negotiation techniques and tone of voice and tactics and blah, blah, blah. And one of the tips that he gave was, if you're at a negotiating table with like with people, like more than one person, and you've got the main person talking, the main person negotiating, he's like, you should be looking at the other people's reactions in the room, because then you start to figure out if what he's saying is true or not. If he puts a deal on the table, but you see the other guy kind of wince or react or whatever, then you begin to understand if he's telling the truth or not, or what he's really saying by watching the other people. And I was like, that's exactly what you do with a Trump press conference. Or what you should do with any press conference is watch the other people, because I don't know how many times have you seen somebody up at the podium beside Trump and he says something, and you watch like John Kelly's reaction or Fauci's reaction, and they're just like, wait, what?
Yeah. Who was the guy? Who was the astronaut? I forget. Was it Buzz Aldrin? He was like classic.
I think,
But like he was, I think Trump was like signing some bills maybe to allocate more money to NASA or something like that. But he's just talking, and you're just like, oh my God, it's just, it's like watching The Office. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
Michael says some crazy shit and nobody can say anything. You know what I mean? You can just see their reaction. Everybody's just held hostage by this moron,
That's a
But
great analogy. I
yeah,
love
yeah,
that
it's the
show.
office.
That's
Yeah,
exactly what
yeah.
it's like. Nobody questions
And
him,
we
but
and
then
get
the camera
and
away to someone
yeah,
like, really?
yeah, yeah. And guess what? We all work in the mailroom, right? We don't even have access to this person. We just work in the mailroom, right? With Patrice O'Neill and Craig Anderson.
Yeah.
But there's another thing actually. Just getting back to Vietnam for a second. There's something that I learned, which was that so Vietnam closed the I figured out they closed the border to China in late January. But then Vietnam has this policy which it enacts in cases of usually natural disasters like floods and typhoons, like especially in like the central where like flooding is, it's just crazy. Like you can see, like I used to live in Hue, and in the rainy season in Hue, you'll see like literally people will have their bikes on boats and like walking their bikes over these like very, I mean, you think D2 floods, you think Tao Dien floods, it's like nothing like that. People are like chest deep in water. So they have this
Right.
policy that they call the 4 on the spot policy, right? And they use this to handle the pandemic, right? And you can look up what this means later, but it's 4 on the spot includes leadership on the spot, human resources on the spot, means and materials on the spot, and logistics on the spot. So basically, like they're facing it full on. They're facing it, from Jump Street, And again, this is I think this is again part of the reason why they've been able to get such a handle on it over here, and yeah, and over there, it's still a debate. I mean, if you look online, I'm still having a debate with people as to whether. I had one guy argue with me in all seriousness. He said, "Oh, well, they're just saying all these people died, but I don't know anybody who died.
Oh
Do you
my
know anybody who
God.
died?" That's his reasoning. He's saying everybody's freaking out. Everybody's freaking out for no reason. Do you know? But did you die though? And it
I
almost
mean, you've
reminds me of
seen
that.
people make these arguments before, right? Like, I don't know the Earth's round because I've not seen it round, or I haven't been to the moon, so I don't know if we went to the moon. It's like, well, at some point you've got to trust something, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The trust experts. You have to trust
Yeah.
experts. Do you think like everybody who is a scientist goes back and runs the experiments for every single thing that that people have learned up until that point? No, science is like, yes, it's to a degree. You're sitting on the shoulders of giants, and that's one way that people use that to kind of frown upon science. But there's agreed upon collective reality, right?
Mm.
And if you want to challenge that, you can, but you have to prove it. You don't just by saying, if you just say, well, you don't know that, that's not the same as proving the opposite is true. So in other words, if I tell you, Neil, you can't prove that the Earth is round, that is not a rational argument for the Earth being flat. You know what I'm saying? That and
Yeah.
that's the grounds that they're standing on. These guys, I'm still waiting for them to find the end of it.
And this is going to be a big problem in the US, like what you're saying. If we're at the stage right now where it's obviously a massive issue in the US, New York's ground zero. We just read today that apparently there's nobody in New York who doesn't know someone who's sick, which then counters the argument of the person you're talking to. They probably live, I don't know where they live, maybe somewhere rural. I mean, that argument just doesn't work because you go to New
that
York
person's in
and you
Saigon.
probably
That
will know
person's in
someone.
Saigon. That person lives in
Right,
Saigon.
right. I mean, where
Yeah.
there's only less than 200 cases of COVID. Know someone that's died, but or what he means worldwide, does he? But if you've got in America right now that people still can't agree on climate change and things like this are still such partisan issues, what worries me for America is what you've just pointed out, is how are they going to agree on this? Because they even showed on I watched on, I think it was the Trevor Noah Daily Show yesterday, or was it Seth Meyers, showing Sean Hannity again just flip-flops his position. He goes from 2 weeks ago calling it like a hoax and whatnot, and then now he's like, nobody takes this more seriously than me, and it's like,
Yeah.
dude, choose a side. Like, no, it's just, yeah. And then so obviously people watch that, and that filters through. So if it becomes real partisan and you have people not believing science, I think that's what's going to be a big problem for America.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about this before. You know, the thing is, if you had hokey ideas 30 years ago, right? Then you would just have to sit there with your hokey ass ideas and live in your apartment with a tinfoil hat on or whatever, you know. But now you have an internet and you can build a hokey ass website on whatever your dumbass idea is, right? And if you get enough people to agree with that dumbass idea, it can it can be propagated, you know, and that's what's happening, you know. And so you get people who, some people just are against science because they just don't understand it. And rather than like actually trying to see, well, like all this stuff, it's the science, promotes these ideas because they've been proven to be true. That's how science works. You have an idea. Science works because you try to disprove something. You know, like the reason they found out Earth was round is somebody tried to disprove that the Earth was round. Even if you're trying to prove it, right? You have to try to disprove it in order to prove it. And if you can't disprove it, then it turns out to be true. But but we're not there yet with the trust in science. And there's as far as the climate change thing, you know, there's a monetary, you know, there's an economic incentive towards a lot of these politicians denying climate change, right? Because then all of a sudden, you know, the what's going to happen to the oil lobbyists? What's going to happen to all these industries? All this money, if it turns out that human beings are responsible for climate change and it has to do with CO2 emissions, right? Then these companies are going to have to do something different, or they're going to have to not exist. And well, how's that going to affect the economy? So like the oil companies don't disagree. If you look at scientists that work for oil companies, they don't disagree that it's causing climate change, right? The scientists don't. But when they lobby the politicians can pretend to disagree, even though they might totally believe it. But it doesn't benefit them economically to agree with the climate science. So they go and propagate this bullshit idea to broke people that have nothing to gain economically from the denial of climate change and everything else to lose, you know. And then all of a sudden, there you go. There you have an idea. Now you have the distrust in science and just, who are these scientists? Oh, they think they're so smart with their science, right? And next thing you know, when something real like this comes along, then all of a sudden there's this ingrained distrust, and people don't want to fucking listen. They want to go to a mega church. Meanwhile, ask one of these priests, one of these pastors, whatever the hell, who supposedly has healing hands. I asked them to go to one of those coronavirus hospitals, right, with no mask on and no gloves, right, and go heal everybody. I bet you anything they won't set foot in one of those places. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're just gonna die from stupid ideas. You know?
Well, you know, the thing is, I think it's I probably said this before somewhere on the podcast. So I used to be a massive conspiracy theorist, right, going back like 12 years ago. I remember around about 2008, and probably for a couple of years, believed everything I saw on YouTube. Was like, I'm never gonna vaccinate my children because I'd seen like one YouTube video, not even close to having kids, but that was already. I was like, yeah, that's terrible. There's mercury in it, you know, and believed everything I read. And then obviously got a little bit wiser over time. It didn't change overnight, but I remember kind of one of the big step changes was I went to work for a science institute. So I'm not a scientist, but I was doing fundraising, so it was a charity. And I spoke to one of the scientists. I was like, look, you know, I read all this stuff. I've seen all this stuff about anti-vaxxers and vaccinations. Like, what do you think about that? And she was just like, it's an insult to science. She's like, to think that there's scientists out there that aren't trying to help people. She's like, yeah, there might be scientists that are trying to make money more than anything, but she's like, there's good people out there every day working to cure cancer, which is what they were doing at this institute, cure arthritis, like cure allergies. There's people out there working every single day for like next to no money. There's not money in science. There's not many rich scientists. You know what I mean? They're out there just trying to make the world a better place. She's like, I want to cure cancer. That's my goal in life. You know what I mean? And so to then hear it from a scientist, and then when you start to realize, you know, and I used to believe in all this, all the scientists are in on it, you know, what do you want to call it, the deep state or the Rothschilds, or they're all controlled, you know, they're in it for the money. And then when you start to actually like look by that quite loose argument, you're like, these scientists are all so disconnected. They all work for different research institutes, universities around the world. Very few of
Yeah.
them are working for massive pharmaceutical companies, and the ones that are just trying to tweak bloody ibuprofen so they can sell it under a new name. Like, they're not trying to poison your children. The whole thing as well about, like, because I worked at a cancer institute as well, was that people say there's a common one, I'm sure you've heard, right, that they don't want to cure cancer because the treatment is more profitable. They want people to keep getting cancer so they can
Right.
keep treating it. And
Right.
again, I learned this just through working at a science institute. It couldn't be further from the truth. The truth is,
No.
if someone was to find a cure for cancer, it would be the most profitable thing ever. Because
It is.
do you know what's the
It's
number
ball
one
under control.
cause of cancer?
Sugar.
Old age. We're just getting
Old
older.
age.
Literally, we're getting
Being
healthier.
alive. Being alive. If you,
Being alive
well,
causes
it's true,
cancer. Like,
'cause
literally.
dead people don't get cancer. That's one good thing.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
is literally just part of the aging process. Is
Right.
every single person gets cancer every day, and your body just deals with it. And then as you get older, eventually one of those cancerous cells is going to turn into a tumor, and whether it's benign or malignant or not. And I might be
Yeah.
speaking out of turn here because, as I said, I'm not a scientist, but from what I remember, from what I learned, this is what I remember to be the case. So
Makes sense.
the fact to say that they don't want to cure cancer because treating it's more profitable is absolutely ludicrous. And again, when I spoke to a real scientist who's was investigating at the time brain cancer and having amazing results, she's like, it's an insult to me and to other scientists to claim that we don't want to cure cancer. So,
Yeah.
as I said, it wasn't an overnight for me, but like a step-by-step change. And then talking to real people, realizing how the real world works, you're like, there's no grand conspiracy. Like, there's just not. And I still
Yeah.
know people out there who are anti-vaxxers, who don't want to vaccinate their children. And I get
Yeah.
it. Like, I understand it because I had that point of view for a short
Yeah.
time. But
Yeah.
now, though, I'm like, I think it's dangerous. Like, measles are going up, mumps are going up. We need a vaccine for this flu. Nobody's
Yeah.
rushing out to try and find a new essential oil that's going to cure coronavirus. Just like you're saying, the priests aren't running into the hospital
Yeah.
with their healing hands. Like,
Yeah.
we know that science is going to solve this. So the fact that people can still be against science because they don't understand it, that it's very frustrating, right?
Well, we'll see when they come up with a vaccine for the coronavirus. That's when the rubber's gonna hit the road. We're gonna see about these anti-vaxxer people and see what's gonna happen to them. You know what I mean? Like, because first of all, you're gonna have to stand by your original position, because in modern day society, as governed by social media, the worst thing that you can be is wrong. That's like the worst thing. If somebody, like, if you're actually proven wrong or have to say that you're wrong. Like, you're talking about Sean Hannity, that he, 1 minute he's saying it's a hoax, and then he doesn't even acknowledge the fact that he's wrong. And then the next 2 weeks later, he's talking about nobody's more serious about this coronavirus than I am, right? It's like nobody wants to be wrong. So these people are gonna, we'll see if these people are still clutching on to their ideas, But something you were saying got me thinking about, like, science for profit. You know who I bet the profitable scientists are? You know who I bet they are? Or some of them at least, is like those 3% of scientists that are against climate change,
Yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah,
You know what I'm
unscrupulous
saying?
ones.
They're freaking loaded, right? You get like the oil companies like, hey, we saw about your research. We want to give you some more money for your research, that's disproving climate change, yeah, I mean, we don't have this. There's literally no other way out of this. We have to trust people that are experts in the subject, or become an expert yourself. But being an expert does not include just fishing around on the goddamn internet, right? Because you can find anything, whatever your agenda is, whatever your position is on anything, you can find someone to back it up on the internet.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. Talking about before, like the best thing about the internet is that anybody with any idea has a forum for which they can share whatever their idea is, whatever their thoughts are. The worst thing about the internet is anyone with an idea can share their idea on this medium and share what their thoughts are. So we just got to be smarter. And I'm just talking about, like, even just regular ass everyday people, like, at least 5 times a day, I see somebody on my Facebook feed, which means most of these people I know personally. like posting something that is so easily proven false. Like if you see something and you see and you're like, wow, I so agree with that. That's just what I was thinking, right? It's something that's just like kind of mind-blowingly true for you, right? Just do one more search just to make sure. Just Google it, you know what I mean? And make sure that Snopes isn't the first thing that comes up.
Yeah.
You know, but people get so excited about that kind of stuff. So I think now, I mean, the first thing on this agenda is figuring out this pandemic and, how to keep people from getting it, how to slow down the rate of contraction so that, the hospitals aren't overworked. And fucking, you should talk to a doctor about this. That should be one of your shows. Talking to an actual doctor that has to work in one of these places. Because I'm sure if I were one of those people, I would want to put these people's head through a freaking wall. You know what I mean? Because these ideas, isolated, are annoying. But in the context of what's going on, like propagating the idea that the coronavirus is a flu or it's a hoax, it's dangerous. Oh, by the way,
that's a good shout.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, if there's any doctors listening who wanna come on, or maybe I'll have a wee bit of a search and see if there's anyone I know that might want to come on, because they would be interesting. Because I think as well, what I think with the internet and what you're talking about, anyone can say what they want. A lot of it's kind of harmless, right? Like you're just reading it on the internet, you're forming your own views. Even like, I'm talking about me being a bit anti-vaxxer, but then as soon as more and more people believe in it, now we see the things like more and more anti-vaxxers and a rise in measles and things like this. And then now when it comes to a situation like this is now where it is actually dangerous. It's not just online. It's not just people chatting in a forum. It's not just a couple of people going, yeah, I believe in that. And like you said, they don't want to admit they're wrong. Their position is entrenched. And then now when we have this global pandemic and all these experts are saying one thing, they're like, well, I'm not sure I believe that. It's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna figure out like how far freedom of speech should go, because there's the whole thing where, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, there's this like classic argument for the First Amendment that's used in America. First Amendment being freedom of speech, right? And it's like, okay, so there's freedom of speech. Does that mean you have the freedom to yell fire in a crowded movie theater? This is like the classic, and the answer is no, because you're putting people's lives in danger, right? So case in point, there was a guy, and this wasn't even that dangerous, but there was a guy here in Saigon, local Vietnamese dude, and he was posting things on Facebook that, like, be prepared, everyone, the government is about to enforce a lockdown, and it starts tonight at midnight. Mind you, a friend of mine, someone that you probably know, called me on the same day, called me on the phone, right? Like, how many times do you just call somebody on the phone these days, right? And he calls me on it's happening today. Jake, make sure you're not on the street after 6 o'clock. They're going to start grabbing foreigners, and they're going to start putting them in quarantine camps. You better stay inside. And they're coming after Americans. He was like on some really paranoid, frantic. And I'll tell you what, it freaked me out for about 5 minutes until I called some other friends, and we talked about it. We're like, yo, he's tripping. And of course, nothing like that happened. They did enforce another level of quarantine, which is like, hey, just don't go out, like we were talking about before. Don't go out if you don't have to. Just go and get food. But the guy who originally made this post was actually jailed and fined for publishing misinformation. Which, I mean, there's an argument to be made whether that was good or not. But it's interesting that it happens. If people got jailed for publishing misinformation, in the States, the jails would be full. You have to get all those crack dealers out, all those people who sold weed, right?
But it's like, it's a fine line, right? Because we had this discussion that you're talking about today in the room, and what we were saying was, right, so right now we're saying, like, well, that's a good thing because he's publishing misinformation, right? But then you have to then also be like, okay, but that means we 100% believe what the government's saying, whatever country it is, to the point that we agree that they should punish this person for publishing information that they disagree with. And that's a dangerous path, because then if we're starting to give governments the power to punish someone publishing stuff that they disagree with, it's a real dangerous precedent. And that's why America is on the other side of the scale of, you can almost say whatever and do what you want because they have that freedom of government and blah, blah, blah. And so the other worrying thing that we've mentioned a couple of times is all these governments now have these emergency powers, lockdown, what so forth, but what they don't lift those powers. Now, I don't think that will be the case. I think governments will lift these powers. I do still have trust in them, but again, it's just there's definitely a worry there, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I trust any government with having like the limited amount of power. I mean, you don't really have much of a choice, right? But I don't know if I don't. Definitely, Trump is the last president I would want to have in charge when they start enforcing martial law, right? But to go back to the original thing you said, they didn't jail the guy because they disagreed with what he said. Like, you can't, like, there's not. This is such a kind of esoteric thing. There's no such thing as disagreeing with a fact, right? So, like, if I say there's such thing as dogs, and you say you disagree, like, it's not debatable. Like, the government, it's not that the government disagreed with the guy posting that they were gonna enforce martial law or whatever. It just wasn't true. There's not.
Yeah.
It's like you can't. You understand what I'm saying? It's like it's a fundamental thing that I'm having trouble articulating right now. But again, if I tell you 2 parts hydrogen, oxygen makes water, and you go, I disagree. It's not a debatable point. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know.
It's not something for you to. It's not an opinion. It's not an opinion, is what I mean. You know what I mean? Yeah.
We apparently can have alternative facts these days, so maybe there's alternative water. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. You're about to have an alternative conversation right now. With yourself.
No, you remember that one when Kellyanne Conway came out with her alternative
facts?
Yeah,
of course I do.
Yeah, just make sure you knew that I wasn't actually saying that myself.
No. I got you. I get that you were. I get it was a callback and that you were being,
all right.
being ironic or whatever. Yeah. Alternative facts. We used to call it bullshit. You know what I mean? That's because there's facts and then there's bullshit. You know what I mean? But you can't say bullshit on TV. So.
Well, this is the beauty of the internet. We can just make a podcast from the balcony of my quarantine via the beauty of Skype, and we can just put it out there, and someone's going to listen to this, and they're either going to think that we're talking bullshit or we're making sense. I'm not too sure. Send me a message. Know what you think. But let's move on from the heavy stuff. So what have you done to prepare for quarantine? Because as I said, we're hopefully getting out soon. We've been out of the country since the 10th of March. We have nothing in the house. We are going to have to get out of here and get prepared pretty quickly for basically another quarantine, but just this time we're going to be at home.
Yeah. What have I done for quarantine? I've just mostly, so as you know, I don't cook very often. Food is so cheap and so easy to get here in Vietnam and Saigon that generally I just eat every meal out. That's not an option. It's still an option to order meals, but I've just been feeling like being a little more self-sufficient. So I did a bunch of food shopping. I have kind of a small kitchen, so I kind of had to reorganize my kitchen to get my microwave and my toaster oven and my stovetop ready. So I got my stuff ready to cook. My last 3 meals I cooked, which, I'm sure to people in the Western Hemisphere or outside of Vietnam listening to this, that's like, what do you want, a medal? But that's unusual, right?
A medal in Vietnam for that, yeah, for sure.
Right, but so I've been cooking a lot at home, just kind of talking to people about different projects to launch. This is, for people here in Vietnam, especially teachers. People have really taken a financial hit. I had a huge cut in my salary. Fortunately, I was able to talk to my landlord, and I actually got a substantial rent reduction. So, another advantage to not living in a capitalist society. People aren't trying to freaking get you everywhere you go.
Yeah.
I did a post about that on Facebook where I said, hey, you know what? I got a rent reduction. Everybody should try that with your landlord and see what they say. And some of my friends said that the landlord laughed in their faces.
Really?
They're just like, we don't have work. They just laughed in their faces. Yeah.
No, so
What, are you kidding me?
I read your post and I did it and I got a rent reduction.
Yeah, there you go. You see?
Maybe not as substantial as yours, but I got like a 20%, which is better than nothing. Because yeah, we've had massive salary as well. Yeah, I mean that's a big deal. We probably had a bigger cut in our salary, but still, and at this time, and talking to relatives one of my relatives owns an apartment. She's had to do the same. Her two tenants both lost their jobs right now, so she's had to reduce their rent. Like everyone's just in this vicious cycle of, and you can't be like, I'm not going to reduce your rent because that's just going to hurt you in the long run, right? Like, so everyone's helping each other. But yeah, it was your post. I saw your post and I was like, oh shit, that's a good idea. I'm going to try that. And thankfully, but our landlord, yes, he's super nice. He's like in the same position. He's like, my wife and I, we've both had salary cuts. I have 2 apartments that are empty right now because I can't rent them out. Like, so I mean, just a bit of noise in the background now. So just because someone might have a bit of money doesn't mean that they're not immune to these problems as well,
No, yeah, I mean, and yeah, the landlord owes money to somebody else.
Exactly. Right.
Somebody else too, I mean, I think there should be like a unilateral, like, let's just cut the shit. Let's just cut the economy game. Let's just stop for a minute so we can just deal with this other shit. You know what I mean? Which goes back to the old Bill Hicks, thing about the economy being fake. This is like an agreed upon delusion that, this country is this much in debt and, the deficit is this. And, because when it comes down to it, like all we have is this planet full of people and resources, and we have to figure out how to make this shit work, Yeah. And I think that something like this is kind of like the reset button that's going to wake a lot of people up to that,
For sure.
I'll probably get killed after this podcast.
Yeah. Well, you remember like when I was going to talk about like performing and stuff, because obviously all of that has stopped. But you remember I was making quite a lot of. I was starting all my shows for about a month or so with kind of coronavirus jokes and talking about it being an overreaction and people are wearing masks when they don't have to. And then I remember as it started to get more serious, and I was like, I kind of regret making these. And then I was going on stage saying, I have been making jokes about coronavirus, but I'm not anymore because I'm worried I'm going to be like that comedian that gets coronavirus and dies after making jokes about it. It's not got that serious, but I feel that, exactly. I feel like there's a bit of irony there that I made so much fun of coronavirus and now I've ended up in government quarantine. So there you go. But so how are you getting on? Obviously, you're not performing right now. Nobody is. The arts are suffering around the world. I was just listening to the Prime Minister of New Zealand today talking about it and how they're trying to support the arts because there's the one industry that depends on people gathering together in a crowd to enjoy something.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Nobody.
Well, I'll tell
so what
you
are you doing?
Well, just to go back for a second, I just want you shouldn't be too hard on yourself. I think, and I'm being sincere. Is like back then we didn't know shit. I mean, I'm not saying it was good that you were kind of downplaying, but at the end of the day, you're not the head of state. You're not a head of state. So what you say at that time is just coming from a place of like literally ignorance. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't really do a lot of coronavirus jokes because it just seemed too topical. That's for some reason, whatever. But then I ended up doing some later. But in terms of, I'm sorry. What was the second part of your question? I just wanted to get that in. About you said the Prime Minister of New Zealand.
Oh, she just said how the arts are suffering because all the arts need a crowd.
Oh, let me tell you something. I have been in my room and fucking these pots and pans. They're just paralyzed with laughter. No, it's true. You need a. Would you ever have that? You ever have that? Like, you ever practice stand up in your room? Like, like you get some new jokes together, right? And then you're just like, all right, so I'm gonna tell this joke, and then I'm gonna give it like 10 seconds for an applause break, right? And I gotta time it, and then I gotta come after 10 seconds, and then you go up on stage, and you're just like, this is not. This is not how it went in my room. This wasn't how it went down in my living room.
I find it awkward when you're practicing it and you just, because I'll be practicing at home either by myself or sometimes Adrian will be there and I'll I'll pause where the laughter would be, but she's maybe not
Yeah.
listening, or she's not there, so there's just silence, and it's so awkward. And yeah, you're like,
Yeah.
this is where the laughter would be, and then you get
Yeah.
up on stage, you deliver, pause, still nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always awkward. What I've kind of learned to do is just kind of roll over, just keep going as if that wasn't the joke. You know what I mean? Like Pee
That's
Wee
how
Herman, like I meant to do that.
you just have to keep going. I think that's been one of my the things I've been most proud about since I got into stand-up comedy is never really letting those moments be too awkward. Like if you don't get a laugh right away, just move on, and then
Yeah.
they've forgotten about it.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
worst
Just
is when
move on.
you see comedians like really leave that awkward moment hanging, and it's nothing to do with the
Yeah.
joke. Sometimes that joke get a massive laugh the night before, and then the next night it won't. But some
Yeah.
comedians, I think, leave that just way too long, and it gets so awkward because it's like, oh, or they'll even say like, oh shit, that didn't work, and you're like, oh, why did you say that? Just move on, move on. They'll
Yeah.
forget about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, some comics are actually good at that too. Mitch Hedberg used to, I hate that joke. That was a terrible joke. And if you're charming enough, you can pull anything off. I'd love to see a clip of Dave Chappelle bombing. I wonder. I mean, I saw the one where the people were yelling at him and stuff, but to see how he handles it, because I don't know if it's a one trick pony, but for me, I would agree with you that yeah, trying to leave as little space, little room for
Yeah,
awkwardness, unless you're going to use the awkwardness somehow. But I haven't mastered
yeah,
that either. But yeah, I've just it's hard to think about stand-up comedy. It's hard to think about like what to write. I mean, most of the writing that I do in terms of like humor is stuff that I'll put up on Facebook, like little like one-off ideas. Like what was the one I did recently was they say that COVID-19 has a 1% morbidity rate. Too bad we can't choose the 1%, right? So it's like a nice, efficient, which is literally too bad we can't choose the 1%, right?
yeah,
So just like writing stuff like that on, and posting it up, and then, calling people, trying to just stay limber, because we
mm,
don't know the social, we don't know what the context is going to be. We don't know what the social climate is going to be when this is all over and done with. How are you going to, what's the first joke you're going to tell? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
we have no idea. You could go up there. Hey, remember when there was a United States of America? Man, those are some
yeah,
good times,
yeah.
right? So we just got to kind of stay loose and have faith that whenever this is done with,
Right.
and we have a medium for which to perform, that will still be funny in whatever situation, you know?
Well, like, yeah, for sure. Because a week ago, I couldn't even think about past a week because, just trying to get through this quarantine, and we're getting to the end now. We only probably have a day or two most left at most. So starting to think about the outside world in the future. And like I said, I can't think of any new material. A few people have said to me, you must be getting so much good material out of this. And it's like, I am getting nothing from this so
Yeah.
far, maybe in the future. But yesterday I was starting to get a little bit off because do you know what I was thinking about? And I read this online a few weeks ago before I even came into quarantine. Is just remember that when this is all over and the first sports match is played, the stadium's going to be full. When the first bars open, they're going to be packed. When the first restaurants open, there's going to be lines out the door. When this is all over and things start to get back to normal, it's just going to be this joyous celebration of just doing the things that we used to take for granted. And I thought about like our comedy shows, right? We're not having packed out auditoriums, but we have packed out rooms with 20, 30, 40 people. Those
Yeah.
first comedy shows that we do when this is all said and done, they are going to be packed. They're going to be people that are excited to be out. It's not going to matter what we say. It's not going to matter if we're funny. It's just going to be a celebration of being out and being with people. And when I thought about that yesterday, like I'm getting emotional thinking about it. It's like that
Yeah.
moment there is just going to be incredible.
Well, let me know how it goes. I'm going to be home. I'm going to let that first round of people go out there and live it up. Put me maybe towards the end of the set. I'll do a pop in. I'll just do a little quickie 7 to 10 minutes and get out of there with my mask on.
We should maybe like a clear perspex box, and the comedian has to form in the Perspex box or
There we
something like
go.
that. I don't know if you can hear. We're on the flight path of the planes. I don't know if you can hear the plane going over right now. So there are still planes landing. I'm not
Yeah.
really sure where they're from, but
Probably
anyway,
domestic. There's still planes going up to like Hanoi
right.
and Da Nang and stuff like that. Yeah.
But let's leave it on. I think that's a positive note. We'll remember that we will get through this, and it's going to be joyous when we do. There's going to be a lot of pain. I was worried. I got worried that we've done a few episodes now for this quarantine season, and we've made some jokes and we've been in it. And I was like, yesterday after I'd spoken to Lawrence, which we published, I was like, do I not recognize the seriousness of this situation enough? Like, and Adrian is always wise, as you know, wisest person in the room. She's like, people get enough of that from the news. Like, everyone knows it's bad. Like, you don't need to go to your podcast and update on the numbers. If anyone's listening, you're being a complete selfish prick because he's not talking about people that are dying. I know people are dying. You know people are dying. We know this is terrible, but this podcast isn't the space to be talking about that because there's plenty of other places about that. So I just wanted to put that out there because I do feel like maybe it seems like I'm being jovial about this whole situation, but I mean, we're just here trying to get through it and produce something that hopefully people will listen to and enjoy, and take a break from looking at CNN or the BBC or the Guardian for like 2 minutes and enjoy listening to me and you talking.
Yeah, that's our job. Making people feel bad about shit is not our job.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Thank you. I'll hopefully be out here soon. I'd love to say I'll catch up with you for a beer, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen for a while. We've not joined in with any of these kind of Zoom parties or house parties because just we don't feel like it. Being here in quarantine, we don't have a drink in our hand. We're pretty low key. We just stay on our phones and we talk. We're kind of quiet. We talk to each other, but then we keep to ourselves at the same time. But once we get out, want to join one of the Zoom parties with a beer, so we'll get onto that.
Yeah, dude. We had Cards Against Humanity a few days ago.
Did you do that?
Yeah, with
Facebook,
about 7 people. It was super fun, man. Super fun.
Oh. All right. Well, I'll see you on the outside. We'll have a beer soon. We'll do a show soon enough.
Man.
And,
yeah, man.
Keep up the cooking.
All right, man. Stay well, man. All the best to you and your family. Say hi to Adrian.
Yes, you too. See you soon, mate. Bye-bye.
Okay. Peace out.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're like me, you may use your laptop at places where you have to use public Wi-Fi. This opens you up to digital snoopers. It's a massive problem. It can be your internet service provider, or you know who, looking at what you do online, or a cyber criminal trying to steal your bank passwords or credit card info, or even a hacker at the next table trying to steal your sensitive data. These days, it is vital that you keep your data safe. NordVPN keeps all of these snoopers away. It makes your internet activity private, protects you from accessing dangerous websites that are phishing for your data, and lets you enjoy your favorite content securely, even while away from home. And it's easy to use, even I could use it. I've actually been using NordVPN for years now here in Vietnam, and I'm excited to be an affiliate partner with them. I've used NordVPN to watch Netflix, BBC, Disney Plus with ease. And I also know that my information and data are safe from prying eyes, whoever they may be. Join now and you'll get 68% off and 3 months free when you go to my link, nordvpn.com/SMB. Just again, for those hard of hearing, nordvpn.com/SMB. The link is also in the show notes. I know nobody checks them out, but go check that out and you can get the link from wherever you're listening to this podcast. As an affiliate partner, it also means that I will get a small commission when you sign up, but at no extra cost to you. So not only will you be getting a great deal through 7 Million Bikes, you get a great VPN and you'll be supporting 7 Million Bikes podcast. Stay safe online and enjoy the shows you love. Any questions, just let me know. You know how to get in touch with me. And thanks for listening to this show. Cheers.